Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is yet another video in my set of videos in which I talk about my new chord symbol. And today, finally, after a year and a half of making these videos, I'm finally going to show the actual symbol. Now, if you have a chord in mind, you're using it or playing it, and you want to get somebody else to play the same chord exactly, there's ways to transmit that data. There's ways to communicate to the other person to get him or her to play it correctly. All right? You can transmit that data through verbal instruction. In other words, you can say, like to your guitar player, say, hey Jimmy, I need you to play a C, an E, a G sharp, and a B. And so that's the verbal way. You can just talk it out, all right? Or you can write it on staff notation paper. You can transmit that data by using the old traditional staff paper. You can write it out, which most professionals would do. And then you can use, to transmit that data, to make your point, linear alphanumeric. You can use that way. And I put a hyphen in there. It doesn't belong there, but I wanted to show you that we're talking about letters and numbers. So you can use the linear alphanumeric method, and let's say you're doing contemporary notation, the stuff they use nowadays. Somebody might say, I need a C minor 7 with a flat 5, C minor 7 flat 5, or they might call that a C half diminished, or they would write it like this, C half diminished. Now personally, I hate this, and I get rid of this in my system, but we'll talk about that later. That's the linear alphanumeric way. So what I did was, I came up with what I call a fourth way to transmit that data. In other words, to get the point across to the other person. What chord do we want to play? What do we need? So I call it the graphic method. All right, you could say graphic or symbolic. And finally, after a year and a half, I'm showing my chord symbol. Now this, in my system 2000 chord notation, all right, that's one of the systems in my book. Okay, and I'm going to present this material to you in this set of videos so you don't have to buy anything. This would be one of the symbols. This is a C major 7 with a diminished fifth. Now you say, oh, gee, we waited a year and a half to see this and hear this, and all it is just letters and numbers. Well, there's so much more here than meets the eye, and I'll explain that in my next few videos. But this is a sample symbol. Okay? Now what we really have here is, we have kind of an in-between thing. So you have the traditional representing the chord by writing it on staff notation. That's my clef, by the way. I use my clef. But here you have, all right, that chord that I mentioned on staff notation. It's a staff. All right? And here you have the linear alphanumeric that I mentioned. You can have the, let's say, contemporary. They would write it out like this. They might say C major 7 flat 5, which I hate. Or my way, which would be C major 7 with the diminished fifth. We'll talk about that later. But my symbol, as you can see, is in between these two. It's kind of a happy medium. It's kind of a compromise. It falls in between. It falls in between your staff notation method of transmitting data and your linear alphanumeric method. Now, my symbol, this is kind of a cute thing. To read my symbol, you would read it like you would kind of look at a sine wave. You can look up sine wave on the internet. That's how you read it. Now you see traditionally the notes as written on staff paper would be read up or down, but okay, up or down. And then when you're doing your linear alphanumeric reading, it would be left to right. It would be across. You'd go across. But with my symbol, and I pulled it apart so you can see, you read it like you would follow a sine wave. C major 7 with a diminished fifth. And if you had other modifiers on here, you would write them up in here. You would write the modifiers here, but you read it like you would a sine wave. C major 7, right? There's kind of a flow. Now, granted, we hear music and we don't hear it exactly in sine waves, but we hear it in something very, very similar to the sine wave. So that's close enough for me. So I threw that in. Now, in my next videos, what we're going to do is, you've seen the symbol, we're going to talk about why did I even bother making the symbol, and what goes into the symbol, what's the foundation, and so that you can pick up and read. Let's say you went back to this one here. This is the large view. I'll show you how you can clearly see from this symbol what's in this chord. And other than actually seeing it on staff notation, I think my way will provide a quicker, clear picture of the notes that you're striving for. I think this will provide a quicker, clearer picture than any system yet developed. Now, that's it. In the next few videos, I'll try to prove that. I'll try to prove what I'm saying, because the whole idea of all my systems is to simplify and standardize. Now, I found that I can simplify only to the point at which the system starts to degrade. In other words, I can't simplify beyond the point where the system is degraded. And as far as standardization, well, that's out of my hands. Maybe some people like my ideas and will use them, and maybe some won't use them. See, that's out of my hands. But simplify and standardize. And if you'll join me in the next few videos, I'm going to show you the bass chords. They're called the bass chords. And my system is built from the bass, and it's different than others, and it's kind of cool. So that's it. Thank you for being patient, and hope to see you soon. Good night.